Even second-rate powers in the outer realm have at least one or two Martial Emperor powerhouses guarding them. Crimson Wolf Fort, in this border region of the outer realm, might be considered a local tyrant, but if it were placed in the outer realm, it would only be considered a third-rate power. In fact, it would be inferior to many third-rate powers in the central areas of the outer realm. Even second-rate powers in the central areas of the outer realm would fight tooth and nail for a second-grade alchemist. Therefore, very few second-grade alchemists would be willing to humble themselves by joining a third-rate power like Crimson Wolf Fort, as no one wants to stop striving for greater heights. If a second-grade alchemist were willing to join Crimson Wolf Fort would absolutely not refuse, nor would they have any reason to refuse. I really was overthinking. I actually forgot about this. Duan Ling Tian smiled bitterly to himself. At the critical moment, he had forgotten the fact that he was now a second-grade alchemist and a second-grade artifact forging master, as Duan Ling Tian took out a third-grade medicinal pill. Neither Feng Wei nor Dongwu Lei were surprised at AS for third-grade alchemists. Crimson Wolf Fort had several, and even the Dongwu family had one. In ancient desert city. As long as you had enough primeval stones, you could easily buy many third-grade medicinal pills, including the third-grade rebirth pill that Duan Ling Tian had just given to Feng Wu Dao, Deputy Fort Master Feng. It seems this Duan Ling Tian really takes your words as wind passing by his ears. Otherwise, should I personally take him away? Deputy Fort Master Feng, rest assured, I will absolutely not let Crimson Wolf Fort be stained with a single drop of blood. Dongwu Lei looked at Feng Wei with reverence, awaiting Feng Wei's response. In front of Feng Wei, he dared not act on his own initiative. Finally, Feng Wei nodded. Seeing Feng Wei nod, Dongwu Lei smiled, Zishang smiled, Zhao Wei smiled. Everyone who wished for Duan Ling Tian's misfortune smiled. However, everyone who cared about Duan Ling Tian, including Feng Wu Dao, Feng Tian Wu, and Zhang Shou Yong, had their expressions changed drastically. Their faces were as grim as could be. Whoosh. Dongwu Lei flew out, heading straight for Duan Ling Tian. Feng Wu Dao once again appeared in front of Duan Ling Tian, shielding him. Humph. A mere fourth-level void transformation stage cultivator dares to act presumptuously in front of this patriarch. You're seeking death. Dongwu Lei snorted in anger, his primeval energy surging. In an instant, above his head in the void, the power of heaven and earth stirred, converging into a heaven and earth phenomenon. Whoosh. As the heaven and earth phenomenon arose, 800 ancient horned dragon phantoms instantly condensed into form, then charged out, their momentum like a rainbow. Sixth-level void transformation stage. Many people's expressions changed drastically. The Dongwu family, a power not even ranked in the outer realm, yet its patriarch possessed such terrifying cultivation. It was shocking. With such strength, he could single-handedly sweep through the 10 great dynasties as expected of the outer realm, which made people of the 10 great dynasties change their expressions upon hearing of it. It was indeed far beyond what the 10 great dynasties, confined to one region, could compare to. An unranked family power in the outer realm possessed the terrifying strength to sweep through the 10 great dynasties. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, preparing to directly reveal his identity as a second-grade alchemist. But at that moment, Duan Ling Tian was stunned. Not only Duan Ling Tian, but everyone else present, including Feng Wu Dao, was also dumbfounded, looking at the scene before them. They only felt their scalps tingle. Dongwu Lei, who had been charging fiercely towards Duan Ling Tian, was still halfway when one of his arms was severed at the shoulder. Blood splattered out, dazzling and eye-catching, including Duan Ling Tian. The young talents of the 10 great dynasties did not notice anything amiss from beginning to end. Suddenly, Dongwu Lei's arm was cut off. As for Feng Wu Dao and the others, they clearly heard the fleeting sound of a sword whistle. The sword whistle appeared for such a short time that if they hadn't been strong, they wouldn't have heard it at all. Dongwu Lei, with one arm severed, trembled, his face showing pain. But he endured it without groaning. He hurriedly grabbed his severed arm and tightly pressed it against the wound, primeval energy flickering within to reattach the limb. At the same time, he couldn't help but look up at the sky, his face filled with apprehension. Just now, he vaguely caught a glimpse of that sword light descending from the sky, effortlessly severing one of his arms. The opponent's strength was definitely that of a 7th-level void transformation stage, or higher. Such an existence was someone he absolutely could not afford to provoke. Therefore, from beginning to end, he dared not utter a sound, fearing to anger the powerful expert hidden in the shadows. Damn it! Could that expert be helping Duan Ling Tian? Dongwu Lei's face was grim, his mood complex. His biggest worry now was that the other party was helping Duan Ling Tian. If that were truly the case, it would undoubtedly be harder than ascending to heaven for him to kill Duan Ling Tian. Taking a deep breath, Dongwu Lei looked at Feng Wei. Because he knew that Feng Wei would definitely not easily let go of the expert who had secretly made a move. Now, he only hoped that Feng Wei could uncover and kill that expert. In which case, his worries would vanish into thin air. Who is it? And Feng Wei, the deputy fort master of Crimson Wolf Fort, whose face had always been calm, finally showed a change in expression. However, his gaze was not directed towards the sky. Instead, it was directed towards the peony pavilion below where Duan Ling Tian was located. Feng Wei. Long time no see. Under the gaze of many eyes, a burly middle-aged man suddenly flew out of the peony pavilion. A moment later, the middle-aged man vanished into thin air before most people's eyes. When he reappeared, he was already beside Su Li. Master. Su Li couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw his master appear. Just now, Duan Ling Tian was in crisis, and although he was anxious, he did not make useless efforts, but continuously contacted his master, because he knew that unless his master stepped forward, even if all the people of the 10 great dynasties protected Duan Ling Tian, Duan Ling Tian would not be able to survive. The person who just now cut off the arm of the Donghua family patriarch, was it him? This expert, being able to sever the Donghua family patriarch's arm so easily, must at least be a 7th-level void transformation stage or higher. In that case, his strength is probably not inferior to Deputy Fort Master Feng's. He is the master of that young talent from the Great Han Dynasty who came to participate in the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition. That young talent is standing beside Duan Ling Tian, seemingly a friend of Duan Ling Tian. The people of the 10 great dynasties whispered among themselves, the scene unfolding before them, with its twists and turns, left them dazzled. Their emotions surged and fell, taking a long time to calm down. Su Li's master? Zishang's face changed drastically. He had never imagined that Su Li's master would be a powerful expert of the 7th-level void transformation stage, or higher, and that he would appear at this moment, seeing that Duan Ling Tian was about to be taken away by Dongwu Lei. The other party's interference undoubtedly brought about new complications. Now, he only hoped that Feng Wei, the deputy fort master of Crimson Wolf Fort, could keep Su Li's master in check, and those who wished for Duan Ling Tian's death also had extremely grim expressions, just a little more. This Duan Ling Tian would have died. They all felt it was a great pity. For the people of the Great Han Dynasty, apart from Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tianwu, and Long Yun, everyone, including Feng Wu Dao, was shocked by Su Li's master's strength. From within that pavilion, with a single sword strike, he severed the Donghua family patriarch's arm. What kind of powerful method was that? That Donghua family patriarch, after all, was in existence at the 6th level of the void transformation stage. Even a 7th-level void transformation stage expert might not necessarily possess such formidable strength, right? Senior. Duan Ling Tian looked at Su Li's master, his face full of surprise. Although he had known all along that Su Li's master was present, because he was unsure of Su Li's master's strength. He didn't know if Su Li's master could save him from the Crimson Wolf Fort's deputy fort master, Feng Wei. Now, Su Li's master made a powerful move, severing one of the Donghua family patriarch's arms, which gave him hope, although he already had a solution. But doing so would undoubtedly mean he would have to work for Crimson Wolf Fort. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still filled with unwillingness. No one would willingly work for a power that once wanted to kill them. Thank you, Senior. Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath and bowed to Su Li's master in thanks. He had met Su Li's master twice, and Su Li's master had saved his life twice. for such an existence. He respected him from the bottom of his heart. Su Li's master nodded, then looked at Feng Wei, his gaze like a sword. Jian Shi-san. Feng Wei's face was extremely grim, and he angrily said, "Since when did the affairs of my Crimson Wolf Fort become yours to meddle with?" Although Feng Wei was angry, he showed no intention of acting. In fact, deep in his eyes, there was a faint hint of apprehension, clearly fearing the strength of Su Li's master, Jian Shi-san. Jian Shi-san, a powerful sword cultivator from the Blade and Sword sect, and the second strongest expert of the Sword Gate within the Blade and Sword sect. Years ago, he had fought against him in just one exchange. He had been defeated by the other party, and the Blade and Sword sect was an outer realm power that was on par with their Crimson Wolf Fort. However, even knowing that he was no match for Jian Shi-san, Feng Wei showed no fear. After all, this was Crimson Wolf Fort, not the Blade and Sword sect. Not to mention that among the 5 deputy fort masters of Crimson Wolf Fort, his strength could only be ranked in the middle to lower tier. In Crimson Wolf Fort, there was also the most powerful fort master. The affairs of your Crimson Wolf Fort, I naturally couldn't care less about. But this young brother is a friend of my closed-door disciple. If I weren't present, it would be one thing, but since I am here, if I were to stand by and do nothing, I'm truly afraid my disciple would no longer acknowledge me as his master. Jian Shi-san said indifferently. Furthermore, what purpose does your Crimson Wolf Fort have in hosting this 10 Dynasty martial arts competition? Do you think I wouldn't know? I'll tell you this. This time, of the young powerhouses who stand out in the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition, my Blade and Sword sect wants half. Jian Shi-san finished speaking in one breath, his words filled with an undeniable tone. Jian Shi-san, you're going too far. Feng Wei's face changed drastically, filled with anger. Bullying us too much? Jian Shi-san chuckled. Feng Wei, this isn't my personal decision, but the decision of our entire Blade and Sword sect. Of course, our Blade and Sword sect won't take advantage of your Azure Wolf Fort for nothing. As far as I know, besides our Blade and Sword sect, those bald monks also know about your Azure Wolf Fort's grand 10 Dynasty martial arts gathering. Do you want our Blade and Sword sect to cooperate with them? Or do you want our Blade and Sword sect to cooperate with your Azure Wolf Fort? Jian Shi-san finished speaking in one breath. Feng Wei's anger, due to Jian Shi-san's words, vanished like smoke, replaced by a somber expression that he never expected that this matter had been discovered by those troublesome bald monks. Since he is a friend of your closed-door disciple, Jian Shi-san, then let's drop this matter. Feng Wei glanced at Duan Ling Tian indifferently and said. Feng Wei's words made Dongwu Lei, who was standing by, change his expression drastically and hurriedly exclaimed, Deputy Fort Master Feng, you promised me you can't. Seeing Feng Wei about to go back on his word, Dongwu Lei became anxious. Humph. What decisions I, Feng Wei, make, is it for you, Dongwu Lei, to manage? You may leave. I will repay that favor to you sooner or later. Dongwu Lei's words were like a fuse, completely igniting Feng Wei's rage, causing his face to be covered in a layer of frost upon hearing Feng Wei's words. Dongwu Lei's expression changed again that he never expected that Feng Wei, the dignified deputy fort master of Azure Wolf Fort, would go back on his words so easily. Of course, he knew in his heart, even if Feng Wei changed his mind, he couldn't do anything to Feng Wei, because he was no match for him at all. Dongwu Lei took a deep breath, glared fiercely at Duan Ling Tian, and after leaving a message with his elemental energy, he departed. Duan Ling Tian, you were lucky today and escaped a calamity. However, being lucky once doesn't mean you'll be lucky your whole life. This was the elemental energy message Dongwu Lei transmitted into Duan Ling Tian's ear before leaving, full of threats, expressing his determination to as long as he could avenge his grandson. He was willing to pay any price except his own life. Even if Duan Ling Tian had that Jian Shi-san as a backer, he didn't care. As long as he found an opportunity, he would immediately kill Duan Ling Tian. After killing Duan Ling Tian, he would flee far away from the ancient desert city. As for whether the Dongwu family would incur Jian Shi-san's wrath, he didn't care. This time, if he hadn't been confident that Feng Wei would help him deal with Duan Ling Tian, He would have secretly killed Duan Ling Tian long ago. However, he never expected that even with Feng Wei willing to help him to repay a favor, he still couldn't get rid of Duan Ling Tian. Jian Shisan's sudden appearance completely disrupted his plan, facing Dong Wulei's threat. Duan Ling Tian didn't care, as if he hadn't heard Dong Wulei's elemental energy message at all after Dong Wulei left. Feng Wei coldly swept a glance at Jian Shisan and also departed. For a moment, the representatives and young talents of the 10 dynasties all looked at Jian Shisan, listening to what he just said. He seems to be from that blade and sword sect. That blade and sword sect, in terms of strength, is definitely no less than the Azure Wolf Fort. Isn't that obvious? If not, would the deputy fort master of Azure Wolf Fort back down? However, I don't know what they meant by what they just said. Many people whispered, especially the people from the Han dynasty. Apart from Duan Ling Tian and Long Yun, their gazes towards Jian Shisan were somewhat dazed. Feng Tianwu, although she had seen Jian Shisan kill people in the Ice Fire Pavilion of the Great Ming Dynasty, she never expected Jian Shisan's strength to be so terrifying, even far surpassing her father's that a powerhouse above the 7th level of the Void Prying stage. And it seemed it was not just as simple as the 7th level of the Void Prying stage. In other words, this Jian Shisan was very likely a powerful existence at the 8th level of the Void Prying stage, or even the 9th level of the Void Prying stage. Faced with so many gazes, Jian Shisan remained unmoved that he looked up slightly, his gaze falling on Duan Ling Tian, and smiled. Duan Ling Tian, you little fellow are truly good at causing trouble. If Suli were like you, I'm afraid I would have broken one of his legs long ago. Although Jian Shisan said that, Duan Ling Tian could clearly see that when Jian Shisan mentioned Su Li, there was a clear smile in his eyes. It was evident that Jian Shisan was very fond of Su Li. His closed-door disciple, Su Li, smiled awkwardly upon hearing this. And whether it was most of the young talents of the Han dynasty, or the young talents of the other 9 dynasties, their gazes towards Su Li were now full of envy. They envied Su Li for having such a powerful master, such a powerful backer, with such a backer, at least in this ancient desert city. As long as one didn't provoke the Azure Wolf Fort's overlord and a few deputy fort masters, one could almost walk around unhindered. Damn it, just a little bit more. Zishang's face was extremely grim, and his heart was filled with unwillingness. Just now, seeing Dong Wulei, the head of the Donghua family, about to take Duan Ling Tian away, his heart couldn't help but surge with excitement. But at that critical moment, Jian Shisan's appearance turned everything into fleeting smoke. This made it difficult for him to accept. When I have enough strength, the first person I kill will be this Jian Shisan. Zishang looked at Jian Shisan, a fierce glint in his eyes. Whoosh. Zishang was the first to leave, returning to his own pavilion, just a little bit short, and others who wished for Duan Ling Tian to suffer, such as Zhao Wei and the like, also felt unwilling. People gradually dispersed. Before long, only a group of people from the Han dynasty remained above the void. Su Li, aren't you going to introduce me? The emperor of the Han dynasty looked at Su Li and asked with a smile. Evidently, the emperor of the Han dynasty wanted to get to know Su Li's master, Jian Shisan. Through Su Li, although he didn't know what the blade and sword sect Jian Shisan mentioned earlier was. As the emperor of the Han dynasty, he was quick-witted and could easily discern that. Feng Wei, the deputy fort master of Azure Wolf Fort, was quite wary of Jian Shisan and the blade and sword sect behind him. From this, it could be inferred that the blade and sword sect should be no weaker than the Azure Wolf Fort. Originally, in the emperor of the Han dynasty's view, Su Li, having come from their Han dynasty, should at least give him some face and introduce the mysterious Jian Shisan to him. However, he was destined to be overthinking. Soon, his face changed, becoming extremely unsightly. Am I that familiar with you? Su Li glanced at the emperor indifferently, then smiled and greeted Duan Ling Tian, Feng Wu Dao, Feng Tianwu, and Zhang Shouyong, before returning to Peony Pavilion with Jian Shisan. Looking at the departing figures of Duan Ling Tian and the others, the emperor of the Han dynasty's face was as grim as could be. However, although he was angry, he dared not show it. What a joke. Su Li's master, that powerful expert named Jian Shisan, could probably kill him with just one sword if he wanted to. As for Bai He, Bai Hao, and Zishan's master, Bai Nanin, they were all silent and speechless at this moment in front of such a powerful expert. They only felt a sense of powerlessness. Duan Ling Tian and the others followed Su Li into the peony pavilion. In the spacious room, Su Li formally introduced his master to Duan Ling Tian and the others, Jian Shisan, a powerful expert in the Blade and Sword Sect, an outer realm force no less powerful than the Azure Wolf Fort, whose disciples almost all use blades or swords, and is divided into the Blade Gate and Sword Gate. And Jian Shisan is precisely the deputy gate master of the Sword Gate. After Su Li introduced Duan Ling Tian and the others to Jian Shisan nodded, a rare smile gracing his face. You are very good. If you are willing, I can make an exception and let you enter the Sword Gate to become an elder of the Sword Gate in our Blade and Sword Sect. Jian Shisan looked at Feng Wu Dao. Evidently, he was quite shocked that a martial arts prodigy like Feng Wu Dao could emerge from the 10 dynasties. He knew very well what the cultivation environment was like in the 10 dynasties. For Feng Wu Dao, at an age of less than 50, to break through to the 4th level of the void prying stage in such a harsh cultivation environment as the 10 dynasties was extremely rare. Upon hearing Jian Shisan's words, Feng Wu Dao's eyes lit up, and a powerful fighting spirit emanated from him. Are there many experts above the 4th level of the void prying stage in the Blade and Sword Sect? Of course. Jian Shisan nodded. In our Blade and Sword Sect, there are no less than 7 existences above the 7th level of the void prying stage. As for those from the 4th level of the void prying stage to the 6th level of the void prying stage, there are over 20. I am willing to join the Blade and Sword Sect, Feng Wu Dao said with a smile. Throughout his life, he had been obsessed with martial arts, enjoying challenging powerful opponents and breaking through himself on the brink of life and death. His achievements today, besides his innate talent, were largely due to this very point. Now, hearing Jian Shisan say that there were many existences above the 4th level of the void prying stage in the Blade and Sword Sect, Feng Wu Dao was moved. Once he entered the Blade and Sword Sect, wouldn't he have many more sparring opponents? Very good. Hearing Feng Wu Dao agree, Jian Shisan nodded again. Since you are willing to become an elder of the Sword Gate in our Blade and Sword Sect, after the 10 Dynasty martial arts gathering ends, you will return to the Blade and Sword Sect with me. Feng Wu Dao nodded. Congratulations, Uncle Feng. Duan Ling Tian congratulated Feng Wu Dao. Joining the Blade and Sword Sect was undoubtedly a major turning point in Feng Wu Dao's life. Duan Ling Tian believed that with Feng Wu Dao's talent and methods, once he arrived at the Blade and Sword Sect, he would certainly shine brightly, and even have the chance to become one of the most powerful experts in the Blade and Sword Sect. With the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, he considered himself a good judge of character, in his opinion. Perhaps Jian Shisan was stronger than Feng Wu Dao now, but it was hard to say in the future, because Feng Wu Dao possessed the potential of a strong expert. Perhaps Uncle Feng has a chance to become a Martial Emperor expert. Duan Ling Tian secretly thought. Congratulations, Dad. Congratulations, Uncle Feng. After Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tianwu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong all congratulated Feng Wu Dao. Soon. Jian 13 and Feng Wu Dao left Su Li's room one after another. The large room was now left with only Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tianwu, Zhang Shouyong, and Su Li. The eyes of Duan Ling Tian and the other two simultaneously fell on Su Li. They had too many questions in their hearts and eagerly wanted Su Li to answer them. Su Li, what did that senior mean just now when he said the Blade and Sword Sect wanted half of the young powerhouses who emerged from the 10 Dynasty martial arts meet? Duan Ling Tian asked curiously. He always felt that Jian 13's words were not just about the Blade and Sword Sect wanting to compete with the Azure Wolf Fort for disciples. I don't know either. Su Li smiled wryly. I only know that my master asked me to participate in the 10 Dynasty martial arts meet, and that he would take me back to the Blade and Sword Sect after the meet ends. Although Su Li had been Jian 13's disciple for some time, he had never followed Jian 13 back to the Blade and Sword sect. Then why did your master mention bald donkeys earlier? Which caused the Azure Wolf Fort's vice Fort Master to change his expression. Are those bald donkeys really that terrifying? Feng Tianwu asked next. Actually, I don't know much about those bald donkeys either. I only heard my master mention that those bald donkeys represent an outer realm force that is no less powerful than our Blade and Sword sect. Su Li said with some helplessness. He didn't know much either. It's certain that the Azure Wolf Fort suddenly holding this 10 Dynasty martial arts meet must have a reason, and this reason has captured the attention of both the Blade and Sword sect and another outer realm force that is no less powerful than the Blade and Sword sect. Zhang Shouyong speculated, and his speculation was unanimously agreed upon by Duan Ling Tian and the other two. By the way, Su Li, why is your master called Jian 13? This shouldn't be his real name, right? Feng Tianwu asked curiously. Duan Ling Tian and Zhang Shouyong also looked at Su Li. They had the same confusion in their hearts. Jian 13. It didn't sound like a proper name at all, more like a code name. This, I do know. Su Li said, because I once asked my master this question. According to him, in our Blade and Sword sect, there's a tradition. The Blade Gate Master and Sword Gate Master within the Blade and Sword sect are both selected through an extremely brutal selection process. And such a selection takes place every 30 years. In that selection, regardless of whether it's the Blade Gate or the Sword Gate, 18 outstanding disciples who intend to become a Gate Master are carefully chosen. The 18 outstanding disciples of the Blade Gate, from the moment they agree to participate in the selection, their past names cease to exist, leaving only new names. Namely Blade 1, Blade 2, Blade 3, all the way to Blade 18. At this point, Su Li paused, just like Long Yun's master. He is this generation's Blade 5, and in a few years, he will officially take over the Blade Gate of the Blade and Sword sect. Su Li looked at Duan Ling Tian and said, Long Yun's master? Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, somewhat surprised. He was certainly not unfamiliar with Long Yun. He was the Blade Young Master among the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and also the adopted son of Long Wei, the former sect leader of the demonic Lotus Blade sect. He could be considered half an enemy to Duan Ling Tian. Of course, after he killed Long Wei, they were truly enemies. Once Long Yun knew that he had killed Long Wei, he would definitely want to fight him to the death. Originally, ever since he had outshone Long Yun in the martial arts meet of the 5 great sects in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, Duan Ling Tian no longer paid much attention to Long Yun, because he felt that Long Yun would soon be left far behind by him, posing no threat. It wasn't until the genius competition was held in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and he saw Long Yun again, that he couldn't help but be greatly shocked. That time, Long Yun seemed to have been reborn, undergoing earth-shattering changes, although he was still not as good as him. The difference was not significant. Later, he repeatedly encountered fortuitous opportunities, and his strength advanced by leaps and bounds, while Long Yun's strength could still keep up with him steadily, which made him marvel at the fortuitous opportunities behind Long Yun. As far as he knew, Long Yun's fortuitous opportunities were similar to Su Li's. Both had a master from the outer realm. Moreover, their masters were even fellow disciples. Su Li called Long Yun's master Senior Blade Brother. Long Yun called Su Li's master Junior Sword Uncle. At that time, Duan Ling Tian was still a bit puzzled by their respective titles for their masters. Was that how one addressed elders? Now he was relieved. One was Blade 5, the other Jian 13. How else would they be called? So, that means your master is also the next Sword Gate Master? Duan Ling Tian asked. Yes. Su Li nodded. Long Yun's master, Blade 5, was the only one among the 18 Blade Gate disciples who passed the selection and survived. The other 17 Blade Gate disciples all died. It can be said that Blade 5 stepped on the corpses of 17 Blade Gate disciples to achieve his current status and accomplishments. Su Li sighed towards the end of his explanation. Asterisk. Duan Ling Tian naturally knew why Su Li sighed, because Su Li's master, Jian 13, was also the same. stepping on the corpses of the other 17 Sword Gate disciples to become the heir to this Sword Gate master. Your blade and sword sect is truly terrifying. My father joined your blade and sword sect. Won't he be in any danger? Hearing about the tradition of competing for the gate master positions of the blade gate and sword gate, Feng Tianwu's pretty face changed color, and she asked with some apprehension, "Of course not." Su Li smiled wryly. In the blade and sword sect, only the competition for the gate master positions of the blade gate and sword gate is relatively brutal. Normally, the disciples of the blade gate are very harmonious among themselves, and the disciples of the sword gate are pretty much the same. The disciples of the blade gate are very harmonious? The disciples of the sword gate are pretty much the same. Zhang Shouyong smiled ambiguously. Listening to you, it seems there's some discord between the disciples of the blade gate and the sword gate. Actually, there's nothing particularly wrong. My master said it's just that no one submits to anyone else, and there are occasional frictions and disputes between them. Su Li said somewhat awkwardly. He himself was not very clear about some situations within the blade and sword sect. He only learned about them from his master. And you call that nothing particularly wrong? Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but roll his eyes at Su Li in his heart. He actually somewhat approved of the management style of the blade and sword sects blade gate and sword gate, which were mutually independent as for the bloody competition for the positions of blade gate master and sword gate master. He didn't find anything wrong with it. The Cloud Continent itself was a world where the strong reigned supreme. To become a person above others, one naturally couldn't avoid difficulties and obstacles. Only by overcoming numerous difficulties and obstacles could one truly stand at the pinnacle. Duan Ling Tian felt this deeply, because he carried the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor's 2 lives. And the reincarnation Martial Emperor also walked step by step in those 2 lives, only then becoming a Martial Emperor powerhouse, standing at the pinnacle of the Cloud Continent. Su Li, so, if you want to compete for this Sword Gate Master in the future, you'll also have to engage in a bloody competition with the other 17 outstanding Sword Gate disciples. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian thought of this, his brows furrowed, worried for Su Li. Yes. Su Li nodded. This is the normal process. Of course, Master doesn't force me to compete for the Sword Gate Master position. Senior is quite good to you. Duan Ling Tian smiled. After chatting for a while, Duan Ling Tian and the other 2 bid farewell to Su Li and left the Peony Pavilion. Upon returning to the Narcissus Pavilion, Duan Ling Tian didn't go back to his room, but stayed outside the pavilion, earnestly cultivating the heaven-rank, high-grade, offensive martial skill. 9 Dragon Inch Radiance Flash. After the series of encounters just now, Duan Ling Tian's mood had been constantly changing, and he had long forgotten the feelings he had experienced while cultivating the 9 Dragon Inch Radiance Flash earlier. Therefore, cultivating the 9 Dragon Inch Radiance Flash again now, he didn't have that feeling of being too eager to achieve results. Whoosh! Whoosh! Duan Ling Tian pointed his sword finger, and 2 divine dragons, condensed from elemental energy, roared out, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws between the eyes of one of the more solid divine dragons. 2 rays of inch radiance suddenly shot out. Swish! Swish! The inch radiance pierced through the air, streaking out at an extremely terrifying speed, striking a large rock outside the pavilion. In recent days, Duan Ling Tian frequently cultivated the 9 Dragon Inch Radiance Flash here, so this large rock was already riddled with holes. After cultivating for a while, Duan Ling Tian stopped, holding a fragment of wind intent, and meditated to comprehend. The wind intent continuously improved. The events of the day were quickly cast aside by Duan Ling Tian. In his world, only the wind intent, still as a virgin, swift as a mad rabbit, remained. Time quietly passed, and the day of the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts meet drew closer. These past 2 days, none of the young talents from the 10 great dynasties left the Azure Wolf Fort to go outside. All of them tacitly remained in their respective pavilions, cultivating in peace. Every single person felt immense pressure. Perhaps, in their respective dynasties, they could be considered outstanding existences. But now, they were not only competing with the young talents from their own dynasty, but also with the young talents from the other 9 great dynasties. Even if you were the number one among the younger generation in your dynasty, you couldn't claim that you were definitely stronger than the young talents from the other 9 great dynasties to eye in the blink of an eye. It was the day before the 10 dynasty martial arts meet began to as evening descended. The setting sun was like blood, making the entire Azure Wolf Fort appear as if it had been stained with blood. Looking extremely eerie and magnificent. Time passes so quickly. Tomorrow is the 10 dynasty martial arts meet. Duan Ling Tian leaned against the balcony of the pavilion, gazing at the sky full of red clouds, and murmured to himself. He was ready to face the competition among the young talents of the 10 great dynasties tomorrow, Brother Duan. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian saw Feng Tian Wu flying towards him from a distance, and he was somewhat surprised. Tian Wu, where have you been? Brother Duan, I found out the rules for the first round of tomorrow's 10 dynasty martial arts meet. Feng Tian Wu smiled mysteriously, asterisk. The rules for the first round of the 10 dynasty martial arts competition. Duan Ling Tian shook his head with a faint smile, noncommittally. What's there to inquire about? It's nothing more than combat advancement. The same old routine. Having participated in many martial arts competitions and gatherings along the way, Duan Ling Tian was well-versed in the old routine of combat advancement. Brother Duan. The rules for the first round of the 10 dynasty martial arts competition are not about combat advancement. Feng Tian Wu's eyes held a mysterious glint. Not combat advancement? Then what is it? It had to be said, hearing Feng Tian Wu say this. Duan Ling Tian was genuinely curious. I heard that for the first round of the 10 dynasty martial arts competition, the 100 young talents from our 10 dynasties will be sent into a certain area of the Kangwolf Fortress. Then, we'll be confined inside and forced into a free-for-all battle. The battle will only stop after a certain number of people have died. Everyone inside, besides protecting themselves, must also kill others. Feng Tian Wu paused for a breath, speaking slowly. Free-for-all battle? Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but gasp. What did the Kangwolf Fortress take them for? Killing machines? It had to be said, this rule was cruel, at least to Duan Ling Tian at present. For just the first round of selection, the path forward for a few chosen individuals would be paved with numerous corpses, which was hard to accept. Moreover, in the eyes of many young talents, the 10 dynasty martial arts competition was actually just an ordinary arena. While some of them didn't believe they could stand out in the competition, they still wanted to use it to hone themselves. Duan Ling Tian was certain that once this rule was announced, many of the 100 young talents from the 10 dynasties would refuse to participate in the first round of selection. It was either you killed others or others killed you. Elimination was tightly bound to death, leaving no other choice. Additionally, I also heard that the exact details of how this free-for-all battle in the first round of selection will proceed are only known to a few fortress lords of Kangwolf Fortress. It's also unknown if there are any special rules or restrictions during this free-for-all battle in the first round of selection. Feng Tian Wu added. Duan Ling Tian nodded, then his eyes flashed. If possible, it's best to seek cooperation, and it must be with trustworthy people. If he cooperated with untrustworthy people, who knew if they would stab him in the back? So, if only untrustworthy people were left to choose from, it would be better to go it alone. I've already decided. I'll cooperate with you, Brother Duan, and Brother Zhang, and Su Li, to form a small group. By then, I want to see who dares to provoke our combination. Feng Tian Wu's autumn eyes sparkled, and her words were full of confidence in Duan Ling Tian's strength. That's a good idea. Duan Ling Tian's eyes lit up, and he flew out, leaving the Narcissus Pavilion. Let's go? To find Brother Zhang and Su Li. Soon, Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tian Wu, and Zhang Shouyong arrived at the Peony Pavilion again, entering Su Li's room to meet with him. Duan Ling Tian. Tomorrow is the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts competition. What's the urgent matter that you're looking for me? Su Li asked curiously. Yes, Brother Ling Tian. What exactly happened? Zhang Shouyong also asked. Zhang Shouyong had been called out by Duan Ling Tian, who hadn't had time to explain before bringing him to Su Li. So, Zhang Shouyong still didn't know why Duan Ling Tian had gathered them. Tan Wu, you tell them. Duan Ling Tian looked at Feng Tian Wu, smiling. Feng Tianwu acknowledged, then proceeded to explain the rules for the first round of the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition, which she had previously told Duanling Tian, to Su Li and Zhang Shouyong. Instantly, both of them couldn't help but change color. The first round of selection. They'll send all 100 of us into one place for a free-for-all battle. Su Li couldn't help but gasp. What kind of twisted rule is this? By then, at least half of the people probably won't want to play with Kangwolf Fortress. Indeed, Zhang Shouyong said with a solemn expression. Once this rule is exposed, most people will definitely withdraw voluntarily. After all, life is only once, and unless one is exceptionally confident in their own strength, it's almost impossible to be willing to participate in such a life-and-death selection. If what Tian Wu heard is true, then the first round of selection for the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition is almost comparable to the bloody selection for the positions of Blade Master and Sword Master in our Blade and Sword sect. Su Li's eyes flashed, and he said with a grave tone. Tian Wu said she heard it from an elder of Kangwolf Fortress. The person had a Kangwolf head badge on his chest, and the eyes of the Kangwolf head were silver. Duanling Tian said, so, this news should be true. Seeing Su Li and Zhang Shouyong's eyes flickering, clearly wary of tomorrow's 10 Dynasty martial arts competition, Duanling Tian couldn't help but smile. Tian Wu and I came to find you mainly to discuss how to deal with that first round of life and death selection. Upon hearing this, Su Li and Zhang Shouyong's gazes all fell on Duanling Tian. Tian Wu and I plan to form a small group with you too, to face the remaining 90-plus young talents from various dynasties and survive the first round of life and death selection. In the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition, Duanling Tian stated the suggestion he and Feng Tianwu had discussed. That works, I agree. Su Li's eyes lit up. I agree too. Zhang Shouyong also had no objections. It was also due to the mutual trust between them and Duanling Tian. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to reach a consensus so quickly. After all, once they decided to cooperate, they would essentially be entrusting their defenseless backs to each other, which required mutual trust to achieve. In Su Li's room, the four of them reached a consensus. They would form a small group to face the first round of life and death selection in tomorrow's 10 Dynasty martial arts competition together, soon. The four dispersed again. As night gradually fell, the young talents of the 10 dynasties were either cultivating their yuan force, comprehending moods, or practicing martial arts. A heavy and somewhat oppressive atmosphere seemed to welcome the arrival of the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition. Early tomorrow morning, the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition was organized by Kangwolf Fortress for the 10 dynasties. No matter which dynasty's young talent could stand out and emerge victorious in the 10 Dynasty martial arts competition, that dynasty would receive rewards from Kangwolf Fortress, besides third-grade spirit weapons, numerous pills, and high-grade yuan stones. The rewards also included mood fragments left behind by Void Transformation Realm powerhouses. Mood fragments were the most valuable of all rewards, coveted by everyone in the 10 dynasties. It was precisely for this reason that the 10 dynasties were so invested in the Dynasty martial arts competition, even preparing for it for over 4 years. 4 years, neither long nor short, was enough for many things to happen, just like Duanling Tian. For years ago, he was vastly different from his current self, making it hard to connect the two. Of course, this referred to his cultivation. As for his appearance, Duanling Tian now didn't look much different from 4 years ago. He usually paid attention to maintenance, and coupled with his profound cultivation, the aging of his appearance was minimal. In fact, if Duanling Tian could break through to the Martial Emperor realm within 10 years, he would remain eternally youthful. By then, he could maintain his current appearance forever, no matter if another 30, 50, or even 100 years passed. Even if his internal organs gradually aged, his appearance would not change at all. In the early morning, everything awoke, and the entire outer fortress became lively. Representatives from the 10 dynasties, along with a group of young talents, left their respective pavilions and headed towards the vast fighting arena in the outer fortress. Moments later, most people stood suspended in the air above the arena, quietly waiting. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 8 figures streaked across the sky, arriving at one side above the arena in a flash. It's that Duan Ling Tian. And that Sword 13 from the Blade and Sword sect. That's Feng Wu Dao, the eldest master of the Feng family from the Great Han Dynasty. And the peerless beauty beside him must be his daughter, Feng Tian Wu. Many young talents from the 10 dynasties, seeing the 8 figures descend, couldn't help but whisper among themselves. The 8 people who had just arrived were Duan Ling Tian and his companions. Besides Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tian Wu, Zhang Shou Yong, and Su Li, there was also Su Li's master, Feng Wu Dao, and another pair of master and disciple. The younger one was Long Yun. In front of Long Yun stood a scruffy, burly man with a thick beard, a broad saber at his waist, and old clothes, looking like a bandit. Is he Dao Wu? Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, vaguely guessing the identity of this burly man. Dao Wu, the vice master of the Blade sect, within the Blade and Sword sect, would soon become the Blade master. His status in the Blade and Sword sect was only comparable to that of the Sword master. Other disciples of the Blade and Sword sect could only look up to him from afar. Dao Wu was encountered by Duan Ling Tian and the other 6 halfway on their journey. At that time, Dao Wu, bringing Long Yun, came towards them and joined them without a word. Of course, whether Dao Wu had communicated with Sword 13 via Yuan Force sound transmission was something Duan Ling Tian couldn't know. Duan Ling Tian, I hope you haven't done anything to my foster father. Otherwise, no matter where you go, to the ends of the earth, I will not let you go. Suddenly, a violent Yuan Force sound transmission clearly entered Duan Ling Tian's ears. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow and calmly glanced at Long Yun. He could tell it was Long Yun's voice. Instantly, Duan Ling Tian looked at Long Yun and responded with a faint Yuan Force sound transmission. Long Yun, do you think, now that your cultivation has broken through to the void prying stage, 2nd level, you can surely defeat me? As soon as Long Yun arrived with Dao Wu, Duan Ling Tian had already used his spiritual energy to probe Long Yun's cultivation, 2nd level of the void prying stage. Duan Ling Tian was somewhat surprised by this, but not overly so. After all, both Su Li's master, Sword 13, and Long Yun's master, Dao Wu, were members of the extraterritorial force, Saber, and Sword sect. Perhaps, looking at the extraterritorial regions, the Saber and Sword sect was only a 3rd-rate sect, but the cultivation resources it possessed were far beyond what the various forces of the 10 dynasties could compare to. Spirit fruits specifically for void prying stage martial artists were rare and sought after by the people of the 10 dynasties. However, in the Saber and Sword sect, there were quite a few in stock, as the vice sect master of the Sword branch and vice sect master of the Saber branch within the Saber and Sword sect. It was not difficult for either Sword 13 or Dao Wu to produce a few spirit fruits specifically for void prying stage martial artists. Therefore, even when Long Yun's cultivation entered the 2nd level of the void prying stage, Duan Ling Tian was not particularly surprised. However, if one were to consider it carefully, Long Yun's progress was undoubtedly the greatest among the group of young talents from their Dahan dynasty. Point 1 must know that during the dynasty martial competition of the Dahan dynasty in the past, Long Yun was merely a 7th-level void initiation stage martial artist. In other words, he only took 1 year to transform from a 7th-level void initiation stage martial artist into a 2nd-level void prying stage martial artist. Such progress was enough to shock anyone. You, how could you possibly know? Asterisk Duan Ling Tian's Yuan Li sound transmission entered Long Yun's ears, causing Long Yun's expression to change slightly. His eyes filled with disbelief. Point 1 must know that after he broke through to the 2nd level of the void prying stage, he had never made a move. Moreover, the fact that he had broken through to the 2nd level of the void prying stage a few days ago, besides his master, no one else should logically know. Facing Long Yun's panic and unease, Duan Ling Tian, however, was too lazy to pay him any more attention and instead cast his gaze upon the other people from the 10 dynasties, including himself. The 100 young talents from the 10 dynasties gathered together not long after this moment. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow and murmured, "The 10 Dynasty martial meet is about to begin," as if echoing Duan Ling Tian's self-talk. From the direction of the Kangwol Fortress's inner fort, two incredibly piercing wind whistling sounds suddenly came from far to near, fleeting like a flash in the pan, and almost at the same time. Two figures appeared out of thin air above the arena of the Kangwol Fortress's outer fort. The two newcomers were both wearing the green uniform of the Kangwol Fortress, and the wolf head badges pinned to their chests. The eyes of the wolf heads were both golden. The identities of the two were obvious. They were precisely the two vice fort masters of the Kangwol Fortress. One of the vice fort masters was not unfamiliar to Duan Ling Tian and the others. They had just met him 2 days ago, and it was Feng Wei, who had sought out Duan Ling Tian with the clan leader of the Donghua family, as for the other vice fort master. His position in the Kangwol Fortress was clearly higher than Feng Wei's. Feng Wei stood in the air, his position subtly behind this person, unconsciously revealing Feng Wei's reverence for him. This was an old man, with a gaunt face, but his eyes sparkled with a sharp glint, completely unlike those of an old man. "I am Ning Kan, Vice Fort Master of the Kangwol Fortress, and this person beside me is also a Vice Fort Master of our Kangwol Fortress. His name is Feng Wei." The old man's gaze swept over the people of the 10 dynasties, and he spoke in a calm tone. Between his words, he introduced himself and Feng Wei. "Greetings to the two Vice Fort Masters." Immediately, many people bowed in greeting, and many others nodded in greeting. Of course, there were also many who ignored the two. These people were precisely Duan Ling Tian and others who stood quietly to the side. Ning Kan smiled slightly at the others. Then his focused gaze fell upon Duan Ling Tian and the others, finally sweeping back and forth between two of them. Sword 13, Dao Wu. "I truly didn't expect that you two senior and junior brothers would come to my Kangwol Fortress together. Please forgive us for not greeting you sooner." The people Ning Kan's gaze fell upon were precisely Sword 13 and Dao Wu. Sword 13 and Dao Wu were the Vice Sect Master of the Sword Branch and Vice Sect Master of the Saber Branch of the Saber and Sword Sect, respectively. Most importantly, the two were the designated Sect Master of the Sword Branch and Sect Master of the Dao Branch, the two future leaders of the Saber and Sword Sect. Therefore, even Ning Kan did not dare to show the slightest neglect when facing Sword 13 and Dao Wu. "Old man Ning, you do your thing, just pretend we don't exist. We're here today mainly to check the cultivation progress of these two brats over the past few years." Dao Wu glanced at Ning Kan indifferently and said, "Dao Wu, I only heard that Sword 13 took a disciple. Could it be that you also took a disciple?" Ning Kan asked with some surprise. "Greet him." And just then, Dao Wu looked at Long Yun. "Greetings, Vice Fort Master Ning." Long Yun, hearing his master's command, did not dare to neglect, and hastily stepped forward in the air, bowing to Ning Kan. "Huh, not bad, not bad." Ning Kan smiled and nodded at Long Yun, then looked at Su Li. "You must be Sword 13's disciple, right? From what I know of Sword 13, ordinary people can't even catch his eye, let alone become his disciple. From this, it's clear that you must be extraordinary. Vice Fort Master Ning, you flatter me." Su Li responded humbly, at the same time, including the young talents of the Dahan dynasty, the young talents of the various great dynasties. Besides their gaze falling on Su Li, more of it fell on Long Yun. They had already met Su Li 2 days ago and knew that he was a closed-door disciple of a powerful expert from another extraterritorial force. At that time, they were filled with all kinds of envy, jealousy, and hatred towards Su Li, each wishing they could take his place. And now, knowing that Long Yun also had the same identity as Su Li, their gazes towards Long Yun were also filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. This Long Yun is actually also a disciple of a powerful expert from an extraterritorial force. He and Su Li are really lucky to be able to become disciples of powerful experts from extraterritorial forces. They seem to have only come from that Blackstone Empire, and now they can be considered to have risen from obscurity. Why don't I have such good fortune? Some of the young talents of the Dahan dynasty couldn't help but whisper, and later, many young talents from other dynasties joined in. So, this is Long Yun's fortuitous encounter. Zishang's eyes flickered, and he murmured to himself, before he met Duan Ling Tian. And before Duan Ling Tian became famous in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, as one of the 5 great young masters who were equally outstanding among the younger generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Zishang had already known Long Yun. It was precisely because of this that when he saw Long Yun at the dynasty martial competition of the Dahan dynasty, he speculated that Long Yun, like him, must have had some fortuitous encounters. Facts proved that he guessed correctly. Long Yun was able to possess such impressive cultivation precisely because he had taken a master from an extraterritorial force. Among the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom in the past, perhaps only Long Yun and I have gone the highest and farthest. That Mad Young Master, Flame Young Master, and Sword Young Master have already been left far behind by us. Recalling the other 3 young masters who were as famous as himself in the past, Zishang couldn't help but sigh with emotion. First, I, Ning Can, on behalf of our Kangwol Fortress, welcome all of you who have traveled thousands of miles to the ancient desert city. Regardless of the outcome of this 10 Dynasty martial meet, our Kangwol Fortress will present a meeting gift to the 10 dynasties. Ning Can spoke with a resounding voice at the same time. He looked at the representatives of the 10 dynasties. Please, the representatives of each dynasty, step forward. Immediately, 10 people, including the emperor of the Dahan dynasty, stood in the void and took a step forward. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. And almost at the same time, Ning Can raised his hand and shot out 10 streams of light directly towards the 10 people who had stepped forward. The 10 people hastily reached out to catch them. And when they looked at what was in their hands, their faces instantly flushed red. Concept fragment. Someone couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. These 10 first-level high-grade concept fragments shall be our Kangwol Fortress's meeting gift to your various dynasties. Ning Can said, slowly, thank you, Vice Fort Master Ning. The representatives of the 10 dynasties took a deep breath, suppressed their excited feelings, and expressed their gratitude one after another. Although what Ning Can gave them were only the lowest grade concept fragments, even these lowest grade concept fragments were enough to help people comprehend high-grade concepts. Such a concept fragment even had more than a 50% chance of creating a void transformation stage expert for their various great dynasties. And the others who knew what concept fragments represented also had their eyes light up at this moment. Their breathing couldn't help but become rapid. What a grand gesture from the Kangwol Fortress. Just a mere meeting gift, and they gave out 10 concept fragments. Concept fragments are crystals formed from the void transformation concept, comprehended by void transformation stage experts, and they are extremely precious. Among our dynasties, concept fragments have always been a legendary existence. Yes, in our various dynasties, there are only a handful of void transformation stage experts, let alone these concept fragments that can only be left behind after a void transformation stage expert dies. Many people whispered to each other, soon, those young talents of the 10 dynasties who had not heard of concept fragments beforehand, after understanding the meaning represented by concept fragments, were also moved at this moment among those present. Besides the 2 vice fort masters of the Kangwol Fortress, only Duan Ling Tian, Sword 13, Dao Wu, Su Li, and Long Yun could remain calm. Even Feng Wudao and his daughter were slightly moved at this moment, astonished by the Kangwol Fortress's grand gesture. The reason why Duan Ling Tian and the others could remain so calm was because they knew that a mere first-level, high-grade concept fragment was nothing to the Kangwol Fortress. Soon, everyone came back to their senses because Ning Can had already spoken again. As for the 10 Dynasty martial arts meet that follows, as long as a young talent from any of your dynasties distinguishes themselves, they will receive various other generous rewards. Ning Can continued. Ning Can's words made the eyes of the representatives from the 10 dynasties light up, and most of the young talents eagerly prepared to showcase their skills and perform well in the 10 Dynasty martial arts meet. Now, please, young talents from the 10 dynasties who have qualified for the 10 Dynasty martial arts meet, step forward. Young talents from the same dynasty, please stand together. Ning Can added. Immediately, the young talent's presence soared into the air. Duan Ling Tian and the others were no exception. After flying up, they joined Zishang, Bai Hao, and the others, forming a group of 10 young talents from the Great Han Dynasty. Duan Ling Tian. Sooner or later, I will trample you underfoot and make you kneel before me, begging for mercy. A familiar, gloomy voice reached Duan Ling Tian's ear. Is that so? Duan Ling Tian immediately recognized the person who had sent the voice transmission via Yuan Force. His gaze instantly fell upon his old rival, Zishang, and he responded with a disdainful tone. As far as I know, this isn't the first time you've said that, is it? You. Zishang's face changed, and he glared at Duan Ling Tian, his Yuan Force surging as if it could erupt at any moment. Finally, Zishang took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart, and ultimately did not act out. Not to mention that he wasn't very confident against Duan Ling Tian. Even if Duan Ling Tian was far from his match, he wouldn't dare to cause trouble at this moment. What a joke. This was Kangwolf Fortress, not a place where he could act as he pleased. After Duan Ling Tian retorted Zishang, making him furious and embarrassed, he no longer paid attention to Zishang. Instead, he looked at the young talents from the other 9 dynasties who had gathered together. These young talents were now grouped into 9 clusters, representing the other 9 great dynasties. Those are the people from the Great Ming Dynasty. Duan Ling Tian's gaze immediately fell upon the 10 young talents not far away. Soon, Duan Ling Tian's gaze locked onto one of them. It was because of this person that he could immediately confirm that these 10 young talents were from the Great Ming Dynasty. Zhao Wei, one of the 2 most outstanding young powerhouses of the Great Ming Dynasty, on par with the Great Ming Dynasty's crown prince. As Duan Ling Tian looked at Zhao Wei happened to be looking at him too. However, when Duan Ling Tian's gaze swept over, Zhao Wei avoided his eyes, as if he didn't dare to meet his gaze. Perhaps their previous encounter had already left a significant psychological shadow on him. In addition, Duan Ling Tian also saw Lu Hao, the 3rd prince of the Great Ming Dynasty's imperial family, and a few other young men who had attacked him. Now, when these few looked at him, their expressions were extremely grim. That should be Lu Yong, the crown prince of the Great Ming Dynasty's imperial family. The young man standing in front of the 3rd prince caught Duan Ling Tian's attention. The young man was imposing and exuded the aura of a superior at all times, in his every movement. Because of this, Duan Ling Tian easily guessed his identity. Immediately afterward, Duan Ling Tian's gaze swept over the young talents from other dynasties, quickly locking onto 2 individuals. These 2 were the ones who had had a conflict with him and Zhang Shouyong in a restaurant near Kangwolf Fortress a few days ago. They seemed to be from the Great Chu Dynasty. These should be the people from the Great Chu Dynasty, Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Soon, the young talents from the 10 dynasties took their positions one by one, and everyone's gaze collectively fell upon Ning Can, and just then, whoosh, 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 whoosh. 10 figures swept in from the inner fortress of Kangwolf Fortress, arriving above the combat arena in a flash and standing behind Ning Can and Feng Wei. These were 10 old men, dressed in uniform green attire, the Kangwolf head insignia pinned to their chests. The eyes of the Kangwolf head are silver. They are elders of Kangwolf Fortress. Many people present guessed their identities by the Kangwolf head insignias on the 10 old men's chests. Only core disciples and elders of Kangwolf Fortress were qualified to wear the Kangwolf head insignia with silver eyes, and these old men, each with an extraordinary dignified demeanor, were clearly elders of Kangwolf Fortress. Next, these 10 will go to each of you. At that time, they will take out an age-testing orb, and you will need to place your hand on it. Ning Can looked around at the 100 young talents from the 10 dynasties. I presume you all know in advance that our Kangwolf Fortress's 10 Dynasty Martial Arts meet is only open to young talents under 40 years old. Ning Can's words did not surprise many people because this restriction had long been conveyed to the lowest level kingdoms within the dynasties. The young talents present were naturally well aware of it. And just then, Duan Ling Tian noticed that the expressions of a few individual young talents from a few dynasties suddenly changed. and they looked somewhat restless. Could it be that they concealed their true age? Seeing this, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but be startled, and just then, the 10 elders of Kangwolf Fortress each swept towards the young talents of the 10 dynasties. One of them arrived in front of Duan Ling Tian, and the other young talents of the Great Han Dynasty, that eye in his hand. A milky white orb appeared out of thin air. The surface of this orb emitted a faint white glow, clearly indicating it was no ordinary item. Age-testing orb. With just one glance, Duan Ling Tian recognized this milky white orb as the age-testing orb that could determine a person's age. Of course, this age-testing orb was not omnipotent. It could only test the age of people under 70. For anyone under 70. As long as they placed their hand on the age-testing orb, it would react differently. When a 1-year-old child placed their hand on it, a single red ribbon would appear. For a 2-year-old child, 2 red ribbons would appear. And so on. 10 years old would be 10 red ribbons. However, when an 11-year-old boy or girl placed their hand on it, instead of 11 red ribbons, a single orange ribbon would appear. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple. Each color of ribbon could appear a maximum of 10 times. 20 years old would be 10 orange ribbons. 21 years old would be 1 yellow ribbon. 30 years old would be 10 yellow ribbons. 31 years old would be 1 green ribbon. 40 years old would be 10 green ribbons, and so on, until 70 years old, which would be 10 purple ribbons. However, if someone over 70 placed their hand on the age-testing orb, the orb would react abnormally and could not perform a normal test. Soon, the young talents of the Great Han Dynasty, including Duan Ling Tian, took turns placing their hands on the age-testing orb. The ribbons that appeared out of thin air on the age-testing orb made their eyes light up. Most of them were over 35 years old. Soon, it was Su Li's turn. Su Li placed his hand on it, and the age-testing orb instantly displayed 10 yellow ribbons, revealing Su Li's current age, 30 years old. Su Li is only 30? Immediately, a group of young talents from the Great Han Dynasty who didn't know Su Li's true age couldn't help but be moved. This meant that a year ago, when the Great Han Dynasty held the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts Meet, Su Li was only 29, not over 30, as expected of Sword 13's disciple. This scene was also witnessed by Ning Kan, the deputy fortress master of Kangwolf Fortress. Ning Kan's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but praise him. Ning Kan's voice, though not loud, still reached the ears of everyone present. Immediately, the representatives and young talents from the other 9 dynasties all turned their gazes to the age-testing orb under Su Li's hand. When they saw the 10 yellow ribbons on it, they were all shocked. He's only 30. As expected of the closed-door disciple taken by that powerhouse from the outer force, the Blade and Sword sect. Such talent is astonishing. I used to think he was just lucky. Now it seems there was a reason why that Blade and Sword sect powerhouse took him as a closed-door disciple. The young talents from the various dynasties sighed with emotion. You're 40 years old? Suddenly, a gloomy voice came, causing everyone present to shift their gaze from Su Li to a distant spot. It's over there, with the great Chu dynasty. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed, and he intently looked towards the source of the voice. Now, there was a problem with the young talents of the great Chu dynasty. To be precise, a big problem. Over there, a young man who looked almost middle-aged had his hand on the age-testing orb, and the age-testing orb displayed 10 green ribbons. 10 green ribbons represented that the person who placed their hand on the age-testing orb had reached 40 years old. 40 years old. The 2 deputy fortress masters of Kangwolf Fortress saw this scene, and their faces instantly darkened. The next moment, with them as the center, waves of chilling aura swept out, making the representatives and young talents of the various dynasties shiver involuntarily. Whoosh! Under everyone's watchful eyes, Feng Wei, the deputy fortress master of Kangwolf Fortress, disappeared from his original spot and reappeared in front of the man who had been tested as 40 years old. Are you 40 years old? Feng Wei stared at the man, his chilling aura sweeping out and enveloping the man, causing his face to change dramatically and his body to tremble. This moment, The man felt that the person standing in front of him was no longer a human, but a bloodthirsty wolf, ready to open its maw and devour him at any moment. Yes, yes. Deputy Fortress Master Feng, I just turned 42 days ago. There shouldn't be any problem, right? The man's voice trembled as he asked with extreme trepidation, watching the scene unfold. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow. This young talent from the Great Chu dynasty was one of the few whose expressions had changed instantly. After Deputy Fortress Master Ning Can mentioned the age testing orb, he was already 40 years old, which meant he did not meet the requirements for the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts meet held by Kangwolf Fortress this time. He's probably in for trouble. The moment the man's voice fell, Duan Ling Tian keenly sensed the killing intent emanating from Feng Wei. An extremely cold, killing intent. Asterisk almost the instant Duan Ling Tian's thought crossed his mind, Feng Wei made his move, swoosh. The next moment, the head of the man from the Great Chu dynasty, who had been tested to be over 40 years old, suddenly split open, blood splattered, and he completely lost all signs of life, plummeting downwards. Boom. Before the man's corpse could even hit the fighting arena, it was utterly destroyed by Feng Wei's incredibly violent palm wind, vanishing into thin air and turning into a sky full of dust, as if completely merging with the heavens and earth. All of this happened in the blink of an eye, so fast that only Sword 13 and Blade 5 among those present could react in time. After a while, when the young talents from the various dynasties reacted, most couldn't help but change color, and some frowned, feeling that the people from Kangwolf Fort were truly too overbearing. That wasn't it just being over 40 years old. Couldn't they just give him a slight punishment and then disqualify him from participating in the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts meet? Was it necessary to kill him? The thoughts of these young talents were also the thoughts of the representatives from the 10 dynasties. Although the representative of the Great Chu dynasty had an ugly expression, he dared not speak his anger. Not to mention that this wasn't the Great Chu dynasty. Even if it were, encountering such a powerful expert, he could only stand aside obediently and play the grandson, Deputy Fort Master. I was wrong. I shouldn't have concealed my true age. Just as most people were still feeling a pang of regret over the previous scene, a person suddenly stepped out from among the young talents of the Great Ming dynasty, knelt in the air, bowed his head, his body trembling. Two Deputy Fort Masters, please spare my life. Please spare my life. The man who stepped out from the Great Han dynasty continuously pleaded for mercy, in an instant. He successfully diverted the attention of everyone present, causing their gazes to fall on him in unison. It's him. Duan Ling Tian recognized him at a glance. This person was also one of the few whose expressions instantly changed when Ning Kan, the Deputy Fort Master of Kangwolf Fort, mentioned the age-measuring pearl earlier, and it seems there are 3 others. Duan Ling Tian's gaze swept over the young talents of the other 3 dynasties, and almost at the same time, one person each rushed out from the young talents of those 3 dynasties, also kneeling in the air before the 2 Deputy Fort Masters of Kangwolf Fort, their bodies trembling, pleading for mercy. Deputy Fort Master, spare us. The 4 men knelt in the air, continuously kowtowing and begging for mercy. If they were kneeling on the ground, they would probably have already knocked their heads until they bled. They knew in their hearts if they didn't step forward now, when it was their turn to place their hands on the age-measuring pearl to measure their age, they would still be exposed, since they would be exposed sooner or later. It was better to admit their mistake early, and perhaps still find a glimmer of hope for survival. It was clear that Feng Wei's swift action earlier, killing the man from the Great Chu dynasty who was over 40 years old in an instant, had greatly stimulated them. At this moment, the representatives of the 4 dynasties, including the representative of the Great Ming dynasty, all changed color. They had not expected such a thing to happen. Besides the Great Chu dynasty, among the young talents they had brought, there were actually people hidden who were over 40 years old and did not meet the requirements of the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts meet hosted by Kangwolf Fort. Humph. Feng Wei snorted coldly. All of you standing here today undoubtedly harbored the intention of deceiving our Kangwolf Fort. What kind of end awaits those who deceive our Kangwolf Fort? I shouldn't need to tell you, should I? As he spoke, a sky-piercing killing intent rose from Feng Wei's body. Deputy Fort Master, spare us. Deputy Fort Master, spare us. The bodies of the four men from different dynasties trembled even more violently, each of them pale with fright and their voices quivering. Deputy Fort Master Feng. The representative of the great Ming dynasty looked at Feng Wei, wanting to plead for mercy. However, before he could finish speaking, he was intimidated by Feng Wei's cold gaze that swept over him, making him dare not continue. What? Do you, the representative of the great Ming dynasty, want to take responsibility for this? Feng Wei looked at the representative of the great Ming dynasty, who was also one of the two former void-prying stage powerhouses of the Zhao family. Elder Gon, with a half-smile, the reason for saying former was because the other, void-prying stage powerhouse of the Zhao family had been killed by Sword 13 in the Ice Fire Tower of the great Ming dynasty's capital several months ago. If you want to take responsibility, I will allow you to exchange your life for his. Towards the end of his words, a terrifying killing intent gleamed in Feng Wei's eyes, and a formidable aura swept out, pressing down on Elder Gon, causing his expression to change. Buzz. Just as most people's gazes shifted to Elder Gon, a sharp, piercing whistle flashed briefly. The next moment, everyone saw a bloodline appear out of nowhere on the throat of the man from the great Ming dynasty, who was kneeling and begging for mercy. The bloodline continuously thickened, then gushed out dazzling blood, and he completely lost all signs of life. Falling from the sky, whoosh. Just then, a figure darted out from among the young talents of the great Ming dynasty, striking out with a palm, wide and sweeping, blasting the man's corpse into dust. That a moment later, the young man standing in the distance became the focus of everyone's attention. Most importantly, above the head of this young man, 40 ancient horned dragon phantoms actually appeared in the void. Such a celestial phenomenon was solely caused by the Yuan Li erupting from within him. Void prying stage threefold. Seeing this scene, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but show a look of shock, and Feng Wei, who was originally targeting Elder Gon, now looked at the young man. Also slightly moved out, of course. The reason he was moved, besides the young man's cultivation, was more due to his decisive actions. This decisiveness resonated with Feng Wei's heart and earned his admiration. Soon, Feng Wei looked at the young man and asked, "What is your name?" Lu Yong. The young man returned to the group of young talents of the great Ming dynasty, nodding to Feng Wei. From beginning to end, no change in expression could be seen on his face. Lu Yong, the crown prince of the great Ming dynasty's imperial family, and one of the two contemporary young powerhouses of the great Ming dynasty. His strength was clearly far superior to that of Zhao Wei, who was equally famous as him. Lu Yong. Good, very good. Are you willing to become my direct disciple? A rare, brilliant smile appeared on Feng Wei's face as he stared intently at Lu Yong and asked with a smile, "Direct disciple? A direct disciple of the Kangwolf Fort Deputy Fort Master?" Feng Wei's words made the remaining 8 young talents of the great Ming dynasty green with envy. Just killing the person who concealed his age could earn the recognition of this Kangwolf Fort Deputy Fort Master, and even become his direct disciple? Including Zhao Wei, the 8 young talents of the great Ming dynasty felt a pang of regret, regretting why they hadn't made a move to eliminate that guy earlier. Otherwise, the person who would now be the direct disciple of Deputy Fort Master Feng would be them, not Crown Prince Lu Yong, Master. Facing Feng Wei's initiative to take him as a disciple, Lu Yong, after his initial shock, hastily knelt down, kowtowed 3 times to Feng Wei, and performed the apprenticeship ritual. Huh? Good, good. Feng Wei laughed heartily, then asked, "Good disciple, which types of profundities have you comprehended?" "Master, this disciple has comprehended the wind, fire, and thunder profundities," Lu Yong said respectfully. "Wind, fire, and thunder, eh?" Feng Wei nodded, and with a lift of his hand, 3 profundity fragments appeared in his palm, which he directly tossed to Lu Yong. These 3 profundity fragments are a 4th-level wind profundity fragment, a 3rd-level fire profundity fragment, and a 3rd-level thunder profundity fragment, respectively. Consider them my welcoming gift to you as your master. Thank you, master. Lu Yong happily extended both hands to receive the 3 profundity fragments. If anyone looked closely, they would notice Lu Yong's hands trembling violently, a tremor of excitement. and the group of young talents from the great Ming dynasty, who were already somewhat green with envy, now had flushed faces. Their gazes fell on the other three men who had concealed their true ages to in an instant. Their yuanli surged, ready to strike at those three, that unfortunately, they were still too late. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The other young talents from the dynasties to which the three men kneeling in the air belonged. Seeing how easily Lu Yong became a disciple of the Kangwol Fort Deputy Fort Master and received 3 enviable profundity fragments, all emulated Lu Yong and pounced on their former companions in a flash. Before the 3 men kneeling in the air could react, they were blasted into dust by a group of people, completely vanishing from this world. They're mad. All of them are mad. Seeing this scene, Feng Tianwu's pretty face changed slightly. She had never imagined that these people would be so brutal, willing to kill their former companions for their own selfish gain. This is human nature. Duan Ling Tian's expression was calm. He didn't seem particularly surprised by the scene before him. His gaze, instead, focused more on Lu Yong. Lu Yong, a void prying stage threefold martial artist, the crown prince of the great Ming dynasty, whose decisiveness made him feel a sense of apprehension. Earlier, when most people's attention was drawn to the representative of the great Ming dynasty, this Lu Yong was actually the first to strike and kill that man. By doing so, he not only helped the representative of the great Ming dynasty, but also displayed his decisiveness, which made Feng Wei, the deputy fort master of Kangwol Fort, take notice of him and even want to take him as a direct disciple. It had to be said that Lu Yong was the biggest winner so far. Not only did he gain a powerful backer, but he also received 3 coveted profundity fragments. Those 3 profundity fragments even made the current Duan Ling Tian feel a stir in his heart, as for the representatives and young talents of the various dynasties. Their gazes towards Lu Yong now, if they could transform into sharp blades, would probably have already cut Lu Yong into 1,000 pieces. Feng Wei, congratulations on taking a good disciple. Ning Can looked at Feng Wei and said with a smile, "Thank you, Martial Uncle." Feng Wei was respectful when facing Ning Can. This Ning Can is Feng Wei's martial uncle. Duan Ling Tian was a little surprised, however, at this moment. Only Duan Ling Tian was surprised by this. The attention of everyone else was almost entirely drawn to the group of young talents from the other 3 dynasties. Just now, these young talents had acted in unison, killing 3 other men who had concealed their ages to participate in the 10 Dynasty martial arts gathering. Originally, they had followed Lu Yong's example, hoping to gain the favor of the Kangwol Fort's vice fort master and obtain that extremely precious concept fragment. But now, their hopes were destined to be in vain. Not to mention that so many people could not possibly all be taken as disciples by the Kangwol Fort's vice fort master. Their act of merely following suit would also not be regarded highly by the vice fort master. Continue. Soon, Ning Can's stern voice rang out, causing the young talents from the 3 dynasties to return to their original positions. Lu Yong also returned to the group of young talents from the great Ming dynasty, where he was met with intensely burning gazes. Zhao Wei stared at Lu Yong, the flames of jealousy flickering in his eyes, almost capable of burning anything to ashes. At this moment, his heart was filled with unwillingness. Why? Why did Lu Yong always suppress him in the past? And now he had even obtained such a great opportunity, showing signs of forever surpassing him. He was unwilling. However, no matter how unwilling he was, this matter was already settled. While everyone else's attention was on the brief standoff between Feng Wei and Old Qian, Lu Yong decisively made his move, earning himself an opportunity. Sometimes, opportunities are just that subtle. A chance. Gone in the blink of an eye. 100 young talents from 10 dynasties, and 5 had died in an instant. The remaining 95 young talents, those who had not yet been tested for age, one by one placed their hands on the age-testing orb held by the Kangwol Fort Elder on the Great Han Dynasty's side. The group proceeded with the tests. Bai Hao, Zishang, and Long Yun became the temporary focus after Su Li, because all of them were under 35 years old, and Long Yun was only in his early 30s, even younger than Bai Hao and Zishang. Dao Wu, it seems you've also taken in a good disciple. Ning Can, seeing Long Yun's test results, smiled and said to Dao Wu. Dao Wu heard this, and a hint of pride appeared on his face at this point. On the Great Han Dynasty's side, only Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tian Wu remained to be tested. Brother Duan, you go first. Feng Tian Wu smiled as she looked at Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian did not refuse and stepped forward to stand before the Kang Wolf Fort Elder. The Kang Wolf Fort Elder looked at Duan Ling Tian, a hint of surprise in his eyes, just by his appearance. The purple-clad young man before him seemed to be around 25 years old. When Duan Ling Tian placed his hand on the age-testing orb, all the young talents from the Great Han Dynasty, except for Su Li, fixed their gaze on Duan Ling Tian. Even the two vice fort masters of Kang Wolf Fort were no exception. Among the group of young talents present, Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tian Wu undoubtedly looked the youngest. Moreover, both of them were in the Great Han Dynasty's camp, making it difficult for them not to attract attention. Even some representatives and young talents from other dynasties couldn't help but glance at Duan Ling Tian, wanting to know his true age. The reason Su Li wasn't curious was because he had known Duan Ling Tian for a long time. Back then, in the Scarlet Heaven Kingdom's Iron Blood Army's Genius Camp, the first time he met Duan Ling Tian, he was 18 and Duan Ling Tian was 16. Not because of this, he always remembered that Duan Ling Tian was 2 years younger than him. Age-testing orb. Duan Ling Tian reached out and touched the age-testing orb. In an instant, he felt a gentle force emanating from the orb, spreading throughout his entire body. Soon, this gentle force returned to the age-testing orb.at. This moment, 8 yellow ribbons appeared on the age-testing orb, indicating Duan Ling Tian's current age, 28 years old. Immediately, many people who were paying attention to Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Although, from Duan Ling Tian's appearance alone, they could tell that he should be under 30, but when they actually saw the result displayed on the age-testing orb, they were still deeply shocked. I never thought that among the 10 young talents from the Great Han Dynasty this time, there would be someone under 30. Such a young person has come. It seems the Great Han Dynasty truly has no one left. Many people looked at Duan Ling Tian and couldn't help but sigh. Humph. Seeing Duan Ling Tian stealing the spotlight, Zishang, Zhao Wei, and others who had conflicts with him, all their faces darkened and cold glints flickered in their eyes. What is your name? At this moment, Ning Can, the vice fort master of Kang Wolf Fort, looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked with a smile, and Ning Can's question caused many young talents to look at Duan Ling Tian with envy. They could tell that the vice fort master of Kang Wolf Fort had developed a considerable interest in Duan Ling Tian. It seems this Duan Ling Tian is also going to be taken as a disciple by the Kang Wolf Fort's vice fort master. I don't think so necessarily. Although this Duan Ling Tian is young, he hasn't displayed his cultivation. Before his cultivation is revealed, his value is pending, and he probably isn't enough for vice fort master Ning to take him as a disciple. Many people whispered, saying similar things. Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian looked at Ning Can, meeting his gaze neither subserviently nor arrogantly. You are very good. As long as you can pass the first round of selection in the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts Gathering, I, Ning Can, Vice Fort Master of Kang Wolf Fort, am willing to take you as my personal disciple. Ning Can raised his voice and said, listening to Ning Can's current tone, it was as if his willingness to take Duan Ling Tian as his personal disciple was Duan Ling Tian's greatest fortune, cultivated over 3 lifetimes, and he did not believe Duan Ling Tian would refuse. Hearing Ning Can's words, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but frown, somewhat non-committal. If he wants to take him as a personal disciple, that still depends on whether he is willing or not. Duan Ling Tian was displeased, while the young talents present all looked at him with envy, each wishing they could devour him. Although Ning Can did not directly take Duan Ling Tian as a disciple, the promise Ning Can made still caused a group of young talents to feel immense jealousy. Asterisk, why didn't they receive such treatment? If they knew what Duan Ling Tian was thinking at this moment, they would probably even have the urge to kill him. Just then, Jian Shi-san, who had been standing quietly to the side, glanced at Ning Can indifferently and unusually, spoke up. Ning Can, it's not that I look down on you, but you, I'm afraid, are not qualified to take Duan Ling Tian as a disciple. Not qualified. Jian Shisan's words, like a stone stirring up 1,000 ripples, caused the atmosphere to fall into a dead silence. Those young talents who had just been looking at Duan Ling Tian with envy were all completely dumbfounded. Every single one of them wished they could become a personal disciple of Ning Can, the vice fort master of Kangwolf Fort, and now, someone was saying that Ning Can wasn't qualified to take Duan Ling Tian as a disciple, which made them feel incredible, and their gazes all fell upon Jian Shisan. If these words had been spoken by someone else, they might have already started to mock them. But the person who said this was Jian Shisan, a powerful expert from the Dao Sword sect, an external force no less significant than Kangwolf Fort. Jian Shisan, what do you mean by this? Ning Can's face darkened. Jian Shisan's words were undoubtedly a public slap in his face. How could he tolerate it? Jian Shisan, this is Kangwolf Fort, not your Dao Sword sect. Feng Wei also roared. What do I mean? Jian Shisan ignored Feng Wei and looked at Ning Can, saying indifferently, Ning Can, aren't my words clear enough to you? You are not qualified to take Duan Ling Tian as a disciple. Ning Can's face grew even darker upon hearing this. Jian Shisan, today is the day of the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts Gathering. I won't argue with you, but that doesn't mean I, Ning Can, am afraid of you. Whether or not I am qualified to be Duan Ling Tian's master is not for you to dictate. After Ning Can finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to Jian Shisan. Confidence is a good thing, but I'm afraid some people overestimate themselves. Duan Ling Tian, am I right? Towards the end of his sentence, Jian Shisan specifically glanced at Duan Ling Tian, causing Duan Ling Tian to smile wryly, but he did not respond if he spoke the truth now. He would undoubtedly offend Ning Can if he spoke a lie. Not only could he not bring himself to do it, but even if he did, he would offend Jian Shisan. Moreover, Jian Shisan was an elder he respected, so he couldn't possibly offend him. Therefore, he chose to remain silent. Following this, the testing continued that on the Great Han Dynasty's side, only Feng Tianwu remained. As Feng Tianwu stepped out, she once again attracted the attention of many people present. Heavens! Is the Great Han Dynasty truly out of people? This person is even younger than Duan Ling Tian, and she's a woman. It seems the Great Han Dynasty has truly declined. The representatives and young talents from the various dynasties all sighed that eye in their words. They seemed to look down on Feng Tianwu greatly. Facing these exclamations, Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes, a faint smile playing on his lips. If these fellows knew Tianwu's current strength, they probably wouldn't think that way. Whoosh. At this moment, Feng Tianwu's hand was already placed on the age-testing orb, and 5 yellow ribbons appeared on the orb, indicating her current age, 25 years old. This age was also the youngest among the young talents from the 10 dynasties participating in the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts Gathering. Enough to shock anyone. 25. When I was 25, I hadn't even entered the void prying stage. Although the Great Han Dynasty having such a woman qualify for the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts Gathering suggests that their contemporary young generation has no one. This woman must at least be a martial artist above the void prying stage. Her talent is quite good, especially since she's a woman, much stronger than I was back then. Soon, another wave of discussions erupted. Apart from the group from the Great Han Dynasty, at least 90% of the people present doubted Feng Tianwu's strength. But Feng Tianwu didn't care. She would use her strength to silence all those who looked down on her. A bunch of short-sighted people, how pathetic. Duan Ling Tian faintly glanced at those who looked down on Feng Tianwu, muttering to himself, honestly, though, she's not bad-looking. A woman of such beauty is rare in the world. This is the first time in my life I've seen such a beautiful woman. A young talent from the great Ming Dynasty narrowed his eyes, gazing at Feng Tianwu with avarice, so stunningly beautiful and possessing a cultivation above the void prying stage. Such a woman is uncommon. Whoever can obtain her will surely have accumulated great fortune in their past life. Another person chimed in. If I could have a woman like that beneath me, it would surely be an incredibly wonderful experience. Another young talent from the great Ming dynasty looked at Feng Tianwu, licked his dry lips with his tongue, and spoke with a lecherous expression. You're looking for death. The moment Feng Tianwu's expression changed, Duan Ling Tian's face also darkened. With an angry roar, he shot forward, sweeping towards the insolent young talent from the great Ming dynasty. However, though Duan Ling Tian was fast, someone else was even faster. Whoosh. A fleeting sword cry suddenly rang out. Before anyone could react, a blood-red hole appeared on the neck of that young talent from the great Ming dynasty. Blood gushed out incessantly. The young talent from the great Ming dynasty, who had just been speaking impulsively, remained in his original posture, his entire being utterly devoid of life. As the body of the young talent from the great Ming dynasty fell, a piercing air explosion sounded. The next moment, a formidable palm wind swept out, pulverizing the corpse into dust, scattering it between heaven and earth. Whoosh! At the same time, a tall, red-clad figure stood in the air, revealing himself. It was none other than Feng Wudao. Seeing Feng Wudao kill the person who had blasphemed Tianwu, Duan Ling Tian stopped, his expression recovering somewhat. But a chilling intent still lingered in his eyes, filled with coldness. Swept over the remaining 8 young talents from the great Ming dynasty. Feng Wudao, how dare you kill someone from my great Ming dynasty? Old Qian, from the Zhao family of the great Ming dynasty. His face drastically changed as he looked at Feng Wudao. But he dared not make any move, because he knew he was no match for Feng Wudao. 2 days ago, when Feng Wei, the vice fortress master of Kangwol Fortress, and Donghua Lei, the patriarch of the Donghua family, came to cause trouble for Duan Ling Tian, Feng Wudao had displayed his cultivation. That time, he had been present. He deserved to die. Feng Wudao glanced at old Qian indifferently. The moment he opened his mouth to blaspheme my daughter, his life no longer belonged to him. You. Old Qian was furious upon hearing this, but couldn't say anything, because everyone had heard that their great Ming dynasty person was in the wrong first. However, he had never expected that Feng Wudao would kill him for a single remark from their great Ming dynasty's young talent. Feng Wudao of the great Han dynasty was indeed as overbearing as the rumors claimed. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, his gaze fixed on the group of young talents from the great Ming dynasty. He immediately noticed that Crown Prince Liu Yong of the great Ming dynasty suddenly looked at Feng Wei, the vice fortress master of Kangwol Fortress. Feng Wei was now Liu Yong's master. It wasn't hard for Duan Ling Tian to guess that Liu Yong must have used vital energy to transmit a message to Feng Wei, most likely asking Feng Wei to stand up for the great Ming dynasty. As it turned out, Duan Ling Tian had guessed correctly. After Feng Wudao returned, Feng Wei stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Feng Wudao with a cold, sharp glint. He said in a deep voice, "Killing our guest in our Kangwol Fortress. You, a mere void transformation stage martial artist from a small dynasty, dare to be so audacious. You're looking for death." As soon as his words fell, Feng Wei took a step forward, his vital energy surging, as if transforming into a pillar of soaring flame that enveloped him, radiating an imposing aura. His gaze instantly locked on Feng Wudao. Just as Feng Wei was about to make his move, whoosh, a figure instantly vanished from its original spot and reappeared in front of Feng Wudao, firmly shielding him. The appearance of this person made Feng Wei's expression change, and he simultaneously roared, "Jian Shisan, what is the meaning of this?" The person who appeared in front of Feng Wudao was precisely Jian Shisan. Facing Feng Wei's angry questioning, Jian Shisan's face was calm. "Feng Wei, you want to attack an elder of my sword sect in front of me. Am I not allowed to intervene? What happened just now, everyone present saw and heard. You know in your heart who was right and who was wrong. If you truly intend to attack an elder of my sword sect because of this, even if you have Kangwol Fortress behind you, my sword sect will still fight you to the death." To the death. As Jian Shisan spoke, his tone became filled with cold indifference and killing intent, making Feng Wei's face turn incredibly pale. The sword sect, fighting him to the death? Putting everything else aside, Jian Shisan's words alone made a sense of dread rise from the bottom of his heart. In this border region of the outer realm, who didn't know that the group of sword cultivators, In the sword sect of the blade sword sect were all out-and-out madmen? It was said that 100 years ago, an outer realm force that was not much weaker than Kangwolf Fortress had offended the then sect master of the sword sect and was utterly decimated by the sword sect's group of mad sword cultivators. Now, that force had become a third-rate force in the outer realm. Jian Shursan was already the designated sword sect master of the blade sword sect. His words could completely represent the sword sect. Once the entire sword sect went against him, Feng Wei, even Kangwolf Fortress might not be able to protect him. Therefore, facing Jian Shursan's threat, Feng Wei truly dared not continue to do anything to Feng Wudao. But this matter ends here. Ning Kan spoke, breaking the silent atmosphere on the scene and also giving Feng Wei a way out. Feng Wei took a deep breath, his cold eyes sweeping over Jian Shursan and Feng Wudao. Then he retreated at the same time. Those who had been wantonly discussing Feng Tianwu all shut their mouths, each regarding Feng Tianwu as if she were a flood or a ferocious beast. Vice Fortress Master, everything is in order. Soon, the 10 elders of Kangwolf Fortress put away their age-measuring orbs one by one, returned behind Ning Kan and Feng Wei, and respectfully reported. Ning Kan nodded, then surveyed the representatives and young talents of the 10 dynasties present. Now, this Fortress Master announces that the 10 Dynasties Martial Arts Convention officially begins. Immediately, the eyes of the young talents present lit up, their faces filled with anticipation. They had traveled thousands of miles for the 10 Dynasties Martial Arts Convention, and it was said that those who distinguished themselves in the 10 Dynasties Martial Arts Convention would also receive generous rewards from Kangwolf Fortress, such as Grade 3 spirit weapons, spirit pills, and concept fragments, etc. The first round of selection for the 10 Dynasties Martial Arts Convention will take place here. Suddenly, Ning Kan looked up towards the higher reaches above the arena, speaking slowly. For a moment, everyone else's gaze also converged there, but they saw nothing. The sky was filled with blue sky and white clouds, with nothing seeming amiss. Only one person noticed something unusual. What a complex inscription array! Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow, somewhat surprised, when Ning Kan spoke and looked up towards the higher reaches. Duan Ling Tian followed his gaze, and his spiritual energy swept out, allowing him to discover the anomaly. It turned out that a complex inscription array was hidden in that place, so intricate that even Duan Ling Tian's spiritual energy found it difficult to penetrate. This inscription array is clearly the work of a martial emperor stage inscription master. With my current spiritual energy, there's no way I can see through it. Soon, Duan Ling Tian realized this. How powerful was the spiritual energy of a martial emperor expert? An inscription array composed of inscriptions carved with such spiritual energy was simply not something his current spiritual energy could penetrate, even with the rebirth Martial Emperor's lifelong memories concerning the way of inscriptions. It wouldn't be possible. His current spiritual energy, though at the void-prying stage 4th level, was still too weak in front of an inscription array constructed by a martial emperor expert. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian detected several other powerful spiritual energies approaching, forcing him to hastily withdraw his own spiritual energy. Among the other 9 dynasties, there truly are hidden talents. These spiritual energies are clearly those of void transformation stage inscription masters. Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, a sense of dread rising within him. It was clear that several representatives among the 10 dynasties were inscription masters. Even if their skill in inscription arts was limited, they were still inscription masters, capable of manipulating spiritual energy in a rudimentary way. Whoosh. Soon, everyone, including Duan Ling Tian, clearly saw Ning Kan, the Vice Fortress Master of Kangwolf Fortress, take out an ancient bronze mirror. The bronze mirror looked ordinary, but Duan Ling Tian could guess that it was certainly not simple. Next, Ning Kan's vital energy bloomed in his hand, then merged into the bronze mirror. Instantly, a solid red light burst forth from the bronze mirror. The red light shone upon the void, causing the winds and clouds above to churn, finally coalescing into a solid mass of mist. An inscription array? Immediately, Many people recognized the profoundness of this mist, including Feng Wudao and his daughter Feng Tianwu. They had both seen similar inscription arrays. Indeed, this is an inscription array. Ning can put away the bronze mirror he used to activate the inscription array, then surveyed the young talents present. This inscription array is the venue where you will undergo the first round of selection. Next, all of you will enter it, entering a fantasy realm that belongs to all of you. Ning Kan's words were clearly directed at the young talents of the 10 dynasties present. A fantasy realm? Ning Kan's words left most people somewhat perplexed. Duan Ling Tian, however, couldn't help but his eyes light up. He was no stranger to fantasy realms. The soul skill, 1,000 illusions that he mastered could construct a fantasy space that he could manipulate at will. Within that fantasy space, anyone whose spiritual energy couldn't surpass his was like a lamb to the slaughter. At his mercy, within the fantasy space he constructed, he was the absolute master. That fantasy realm also has another name in our Kangwolf Fortress. Purgatory Fantasy Realm. Ning Kan continued. Purgatory Fantasy Realm? Hearing this name, everyone present felt an inexplicable panic. Asterisk, the purgatory illusion, as its name suggests. Once you enter it, it's like entering a world akin to purgatory. 94 of you will enter, but only 50 will survive and qualify for the second round of selections. Just as everyone was trembling with fear at the mention of the purgatory illusion, Ning Kan spoke again, announcing the rules for the first round of the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts meet. 94 people enter, but only 50 can survive? Instantly, many young people's expressions changed. Doesn't that mean 44 people will die? Some of the young prodigies who were at the bottom of their respective dynasties' rankings turned pale with fright, regretting for a moment that they had come to participate in this 10 Dynasty Martial Arts meet. Vice Fortress Master, can we forfeit? Soon, a young man asked with a trembling voice, among the 10 young prodigies from his dynasty. He was at the bottom, and he knew that if he entered the purgatory illusion, he would most likely die. This young man asked. Many others looked at Ning Kan and Feng Wei with anticipation, clearly harboring thoughts of forfeiting as well. What a joke! Although the rewards of the 10 Dynasty Martial Arts meet were extremely generous, they were unwilling to risk their lives for them. In their opinion, nothing was more important than their own lives. Once life was gone, even the most generous rewards would be useless because they couldn't be enjoyed. Forfeit? Feng Wei glanced at the young prodigy indifferently, then nodded. You can. Just as many young prodigies' eyes lit up, Feng Wei's next words made their expressions change again. However, anyone who forfeits must withstand one of my attacks alone. As long as you survive, you can leave safely. What a joke. Withstand one of Feng Wei's attacks? Feng Wei, the vice fortress master of Canglang Fortress, was suspected to be at the 7th level of the void transformation stage or above, let alone those who lacked confidence in themselves. Even the most outstanding young prodigies of the 10 dynasties couldn't withstand one of Feng Wei's attacks and survive. Immediately, many people's bodies began to tremble, filled with fear about what was to come. Seemingly sensing the change in atmosphere, Ning Kan continued. Of course, entering the purgatory illusion doesn't entirely depend on strength. If you can successfully avoid other martial artists, then even if you are the weakest, you will still survive after 44 people have been killed. Ning Kan's words made the despairing young prodigies snap back to reality, their eyes lighting up. That works too? Isn't it supposed to be a free-for-all inside? Perhaps seeing the confusion of these young prodigies, Ning Kan added. The purgatory illusion was constructed thousands of years ago by a martial emperor-level inscription master friend of our Canglang Fortresses, then fortress master, using an inscription array. Once you enter it, it's like entering a vast world. In that place, there are forests everywhere, with many places where you can hide yourself. Ning Kan finished in one breath. Martial Emperor-level inscription master? Ning Kan's words shocked everyone except Duan Ling Tian. They had never imagined that this purgatory illusion had such a grand origin, actually coming from the hands of a legendary martial emperor expert for the people of the 10 dynasties. Let alone a martial emperor. Even a martial emperor-level expert was a legendary existence. Far beyond their reach. Vice Fortress Master, will we all appear in the same place after entering? Someone couldn't help but ask. Immediately, his question resonated with many, who were all curious about this. If they appeared in the same place, wouldn't some of the weaker ones among them become lambs to the slaughter? That was something they didn't want to see. Don't worry, once you enter the purgatory illusion, although you will appear in the same world, you will not appear in the same place. The closest person to each of you will be at least 1,000 miles away, which is plenty of time for you to hide. Ninkin continued. So, the first round of selections for this 10 Dynasty martial arts meet is the main battlefield for young powerhouses who are confident in themselves. They must find the hidden weaker ones and kill them. Only after 44 people have been killed will you be sent out by the purgatory illusion. Of course, while inside, you can choose to cooperate with people you can trust. For example, several weaker individuals can team up to deal with stronger individuals. Ning Kan's words made many weaker young prodigies' eyes light up. If we team up, I'm afraid we can only team up with people from the same dynasty. Yes, if we team up with people from other dynasties, we might be secretly killed. Unless we swear an oath with the 99 Thunder Tribulation. Many young prodigies discussed amongst themselves. Oh, I also need to remind you of one thing. Inside the purgatory illusion, you cannot swear by blood, because the 99 Thunder Tribulation cannot sense your presence. Ninkin added. Immediately, many people's faces fell, looking somewhat worried. It seems we really can only choose to team up with people from the same dynasty. Even if they are from the same dynasty, who can say that everyone is trustworthy? In my opinion, unless it's someone you trust implicitly, no one else can be trusted. That's right. After all, only after 44 people have died can the others leave the purgatory illusion and survive, passing the first round of selections for the 10 Dynasty martial arts meet. To pass the first round of selections, many people will definitely resort to unscrupulous means. After all, one less person means an extra layer of security for oneself. Many weaker young prodigies once again looked somewhat worried. It seems our previous plan to team up has fallen through. I didn't expect that after entering this purgatory illusion, we would all be separated. Zhang Shouyong looked at Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tianwu, and Su Li, sighing. After we go inside, all of you must do your best to protect yourselves. If we meet inside, it's not too late to team up then. If the four of us can converge, passing this first round of life and death selections will be effortless. Su Li said that in his opinion, as long as the four of them converged. With Duan Ling Tian's unpredictable demonic arts, the young prodigies from the various dynasties would definitely not be able to gain any advantage over them. That's right. After going in, everyone must be careful and cautious. Do not make a move unless you are absolutely certain. Duan Ling Tian said with a solemn expression. Once they entered the purgatory illusion, it was like entering a living hell. Although there were no vicious outliers there, there were young powerhouses from various dynasties who could appear at any time and kill them. One misstep could very likely lead to falling into a bottomless abyss, perishing and having their Tao disappear. Feng Tianwu didn't speak, but she listened to Duan Ling Tian and Su Li's words, nodding directly to show she understood. Everyone, go in. As Ningkin spoke, the bronze mirror reappeared in his hand, and his elemental energy flowed into it. Whoosh. This time, a strong blue light shot out from the mirror, aiming directly at the solidified cloud mist in the sky, hitting it. Immediately, the cloud mist parted, revealing a crack, as if a large door had opened. Whoosh. Just as most of the young prodigies were somewhat hesitant, a figure, like a flash of lightning, instantly entered the purgatory illusion. Feng Wei, your disciple is indeed excellent. Both his strength and courage are outstanding. Ningkin praised. The first person to enter was none other than Lu Yong, the crown prince of the great Ming dynasty. Uncle Master overpraises him. Although Feng Wei was being modest, a brilliant smile appeared on his face. Go. Jian Shisan and Dao Wu looked at Su Li and Long Yun respectively. Su Li and Long Yun nodded. Then, as if in a competition, almost simultaneously entered the purgatory illusion. We should go too. Duan Ling Tian smiled at Feng Tianwu and Zhang Shouyong, and together with some other young prodigies from various dynasties who had reacted, he entered the purgatory illusion. After Duan Ling Tian entered, Feng Tianwu, Zhang Shouyong, and the remaining group of young prodigies entered one after another. A moment later, all 94 young prodigies had entered the purgatory illusion. Outside, a group of older generation powerhouses stood quietly, waiting for the results. After Duan Ling Tian stepped into the purgatory illusion, his vision was obscured by a thick fog. Even when he extended his spiritual power, it was immediately shattered by an invisible pressure. After flying forward for an unknown distance, the fog in front of Duan Ling Tian dissipated, allowing him to clearly see the world before him. This is the purgatory illusion. Looking at the complex mountainous terrain before him, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but smile bitterly. In a place like this, if someone truly intends to hide, trying to ferret them out would be harder than ascending to heaven. However, fortunately, I have my spiritual power to rely on. With my spiritual power, I can cover an area of 100 meters, and anyone hiding in the dark will have nowhere to hide. When I came over just now, there was a pressure that shattered my spiritual power. There shouldn't be such pressure here, right? Thinking this, Duan Ling Tian extended his spiritual power. The next moment, his excited expression completely fell. His spiritual power was once again shattered by that pressure. What's going on? Duan Ling Tian frowned, looking puzzled, completely unaware of what was happening, nor where that pressure originated from. It wasn't until Duan Ling Tian searched through the reincarnation Martial Emperor's lifelong memories that he found the answer. It seems that within the purgatory illusion constructed by this Martial Emperor-level inscription master's array, there is also a soul-suppressing inscription array. Soul-suppressing, as its name suggests, suppresses soul power. Spiritual power is soul power, so, in this wretched place, even my soul skill 1,000 illusions can't be used. Soon, Duan Ling Tian's expression darkened slightly when he tried to use his soul skill 1,000 illusions by integrating his spiritual power into the soul imprint deep within his soul. He found that he couldn't construct the illusionary space at all. Every time his spiritual power was about to construct the illusionary space, it would be shattered by that inexplicable pressure instantly.